All right, let's set the opening scene. The author of the book of Acts, who also recorded the story of Jesus' life as we find it in the book of Luke, he writes these words: "In my former book, Theophilus, I wrote about all that Jesus began to do and to teach." He says, hear me, I wrote about all Jesus began. That's such a sneaky word, isn't it? Luke, yes, the same guy who wrote the book of Luke, is telling us something huge here. The Gospel of Luke, the story he already wrote for Theophilus, that wasn't the whole story. It was just part one. Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, that was just the beginning of the story. Luke's saying, Theophilus, what you are about to read, this part two, this is the story of what Jesus continues to do. What Jesus continues, not just some 2,000 years ago, but what Jesus continues to do through you and through me, through the church today. How about that for an opening line, gang? Folks, thanks for joining us as we walk through the book of Acts together. As we begin, here's what I pray. As you read about the story of the first church, you will come to a fresh understanding of what it looks like to follow Jesus. Because in the book of Acts, we're given this vivid picture of the first 30-some years of the church. Years when those first followers, they weren't dreaming of building buildings or church budgets or rehearsing church choirs or installing a pipe organ. No, they were creating a community that passionately and authentically lived the love of Jesus in the thick of everyday messy life. You see, we get this picture of the raw, unpolished, idealistic first years of the Jesus movement. Those first followers dove headfirst into the chaotic, political, polarized, cynical, disoriented, restless, and hungry world around them. It was a church that was always striving to widen the circle, including the religious and the non-religious, the faithful and the skeptic, including those who no one expected and no one imagined. Well, today, to get us started, we're looking at Acts chapter 1. And before each session, I highly suggest you read or listen to the portion of Acts we're talking about. To make it easy, you can listen or read the passage using the Bible app on your phone. You will get so much more out of our time together. So, to start, where does Acts begin? Acts begins where the book of Luke left off. As we've said, the book of Luke tells us what Jesus began, and the book of Acts tells us how Jesus continues his work. And here's the wild part. We find out right away that Jesus continues his work through ordinary, confused, anxious, slightly clueless people like you and me. 40 days after the resurrection, in verse 3, the disciples must have said something to Jesus, like, Jesus, you look alive, but we're gonna need to see a little evidence. Jesus has to give many convincing proofs that he's alive. And Jesus simply says, fair enough, watch me eat some fish, take a look at my scars in my hands. Here's some real life proof. I love that. But then comes the big question that opens the book of Acts. The disciples ask, Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel? In other words, is this when we take over? Is this when you raise up an army and take down the Roman Empire? Jesus, is this when we finally win? And Jesus basically says, guys, you're asking the wrong question. He basically says, guys, this is what I'm going to continue to do through you. This is how my story is going to play out. You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Not we will dominate, not we will control, not even, hey, here's some clarity about what's to come. Jesus simply says, you are and will be my witness. A witness doesn't control the outcome. A witness simply says, here's what I've seen. And I don't know about you, but I think that's freeing. Because let's be honest, you and I, we love to control. We love neatness. We love certainty. We love we love knowing exactly what's next. But Acts 1 is full of waiting, uncertainty. There are these strange men dressed in white. There are leadership issues. They have to replace Judas. It feels messy. And yet, this is where the church is born. It's like when the power goes out in your house. You've likely had this happen. Everything feels chaotic. You're stumbling around looking for a candle and a match, but then someone finds a flashlight. And suddenly you realize you don't need the whole grid restored. You just need enough light. Acts 1 reminds us, in anxious, uncertain, chaotic times, Jesus isn't done. God is still using ordinary people. The story is still unfolding. God is still present and working, and that's enough. I don't know exactly what you're facing today, but likely there's something that's causing you to feel a bit uncertain, maybe anxious. Maybe today you're afraid. Maybe for today you'll rest, though, knowing that God is still working today. And God's still present in your life. And just maybe for today, that's enough for you too.